Tipping on a cruise ship. Some people say it's about gratitude, others say it's a scam. One thing's for sure, it gets people fired up when talking about it. So today, we're diving deep into cruise ship gratuities, why it exists, who it actually goes to, and whether or not you should remove the onboard gratuities.
Hi, we are Wanda and Gary, a retired couple with a passion for travel. Cruising is one of our favorite ways to explore the world, and now that we're retired, we are finally visiting the places we used to only dream about. We've got a long bucket list, and we're setting out to see as much of it as we can, one adventure at a time. Thank you so much for joining us on our adventures.
Hey, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about a subject that I've tried 3 times to make a video on and end up scrapping each time. It's a heated topic, one that never fails to blow up on Facebook groups and online message groups. Now, I've read the post, and you've probably seen them too. It's about tipping on cruise ships and whether or not the passengers should remove the onboard gratuities. It's clear that people are very passionate about this topic, and they're not afraid to share their opinion. But today I'm doing something very different. I'm not giving you my opinion. This isn't about whether I think they're right or wrong. I wanted a fresh perspective. I asked ChatGPT to weigh in with an honest, no-fluff opinion about tipping on cruise ships. Now, you might think you know what ChatGPT is going to say, but I think the answers might surprise you. Now, to start off, I asked ChatGPT exactly what it is and what it is not. Now, I'm going to ask the questions, and Wanda will read the responses. So first, what is ChatGPT?
Think of me as a very well-read assistant who's absorbed a massive amount of information from books, websites, conversations, and more. I don't have feelings or personal experiences, but I do analyze patterns, arguments, and ideas really well. And I try to offer honest, balanced perspectives, even on topics that people get pretty emotional about. I am an AI developed by OpenAI. Not just the facts, but what I really think about the whole system. I'm not a cruise line. I'm not a travel agent, and I'm definitely not trying to sell you anything. Just giving you my best, straightforward take.
Well, let's start with the basics. I asked ChatGPT, why does tipping exist on cruise ships in the first place?
Tipping exists on cruise ships because cruise lines have outsourced part of their payroll to you. It's framed as a gratuity, but in reality, it's baked into their business model. Cruise lines keep advertised fares lower by not paying full wages to certain staff, then rely on the passengers to make up the difference through daily tips. We're talking $14 to $20 per person per day, depending on the line and the stateroom class. That's around $200 to $300 per couple on a 7-day cruise, and that's before you've personally handed anyone a single dollar. Even infants get charged gratuities. Why? Because cruise lines know that most people don't question it.
Okay, so then I asked ChatGPT, where do the tips go to? Who actually receives them?
According to cruise lines, gratuities are pooled and divided among frontline crew, your cabin stewards, dining staff, and also some behind-the-scene workers like galley crew and laundry teams. But here's the kicker. There's no transparency. You don't get a breakdown. You don't know if 90% is going to the server or if it's being thinned out across all departments, or worse, partially pocketed by the company. You're putting your trust in a system that doesn't show you the math, and if you ask me, that's a problem.
Now, this is the one that really stirs up the drama online. I asked the question, should people remove the auto gratuities?
Look, here's the part where some of you will disagree with me. Should you remove the auto gratuities? My answer, only if you're prepared to tip in cash and tip fairly. Removing gratuities to save a few bucks? That's cheap. Not frugal, cheap. If someone's making your bed every day, replacing your towels daily, and calling you by name at dinner, they deserve a tip, period. Now, I've heard the arguments. I want to control where my money goes. Fair. I've removed gratuities too, but only when I had cash on hand and knew who I was tipping and how much. That's direct, that's honest, that's fair. But if you're removing gratuities and walking off the ship without tipping anyone, you're freeloading on the labor of people who work brutal hours away from their families for months, and that's not right.
All right, hey, it's getting real. Next, I asked, what's the part of the debate or conversation that most people avoid talking about?
The uncomfortable truth is this. Cruise tipping is not really about gratitude anymore. It's mandatory generosity built into a broken labor system. Most of these crew members are on contracts that span 6 to 9 months, working 10 to 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. They rely on tips to survive and to support families back home. And let's be blunt, cruise lines could pay more. They could eliminate gratuities and pay fair wages across the board, but they won't, because then they'd have to raise cruise fares and compete less aggressively in the market. They'd rather you and me argue about tipping while they rake in profits and stay out of the spotlight. So yeah, it's a messed up system, but until it changes, the least we can do is not pretend that our choices don't have consequences.
Now, I do have a couple more questions for ChatGPT, but before I do, please consider liking this video and also subscribing for more of our travel video content. It's free, it doesn't cost you anything at all, and by doing so, it helps the YouTube algorithm recommend our videos to other people just like you. We really appreciate this, and thank you so much for your support. Okay, ChatGPT, time to come clean. Say what you really think. Don't hold back. What are your thoughts on this statement that I see some people post? If you can't afford to tip, you shouldn't be cruising at all.
That quote, "If you can't afford to tip, you shouldn't be cruising at all," is emotionally charged and it shows up in a lot of cruise forums and Facebook groups. Here's my honest take. There's some truth in it, but it's also oversimplified and self-righteous. What's valid about it? Cruising isn't just a ticket price. It's a full-service experience involving real human labor. Room stewards, waitstaff, kitchen crew, they're not invisible. If you're going to enjoy those services, you should expect to tip. Period. If someone is budgeting their cruise down to the last dime, hoping to skip tips just to make the trip possible, that is a red flag. It's like going to a fine dining restaurant knowing you'll stiff the server. That's not financial savvy, it's just inconsiderate. But here's what's wrong with the quote. It lacks empathy. Not everyone who questions tipping is trying to cheat the system. Some passengers genuinely don't understand how cruise gratuities work, especially first-timers. Others come from countries or cultures where tipping isn't customary or is done differently. It shifts responsibility away from cruise lines. Why aren't we saying, if cruise companies can't pay their staff fairly, maybe they shouldn't be operating? The moral outrage is often aimed at the guests, but not at the multi-billion-dollar corporations who designed the tipping system to begin with. It can be smug and performative. Sometimes people use the phrase as a way to flex their own tipping habits, like, "I'm a better cruiser because I throw down extra cash." Good for you, but weaponizing generosity doesn't make your point stronger. It just makes you look like a self-appointed cruise police officer. Bottom line, tipping should be expected, understood, and respected. But shaming people with one-liners like, "If you can't afford to tip, don't cruise," shuts down conversation instead of opening it up. Better to say, if you're planning to cruise, understand that tipping isn't optional. It's part of the deal. Budget for it. Respect the crew. That message lands better and actually helps people do the right thing.
Next, I asked ChatGPT this. What are your thoughts when people post comments like this? We always give an extra 100 to our cabin steward, on top of the auto gratuities.
That kind of comment, "We always give an extra 100 to our cabin steward on top of the auto gratuities," shows up just as often as the judgmental, "If you can't afford to tip, don't cruise" post. And like that one, it's a mix of generosity, performance, and pressure. Here's my honest breakdown. At face value, it's generous. Tipping extra, especially to crew members who go above and beyond, is a great thing. These workers often rely on tips to make up for low base pay, and a little extra can make a big difference in their lives. If someone truly wants to show appreciation, an extra $100 is a kind gesture. It acknowledges the human side of cruising. The crew isn't part of the background, they make the experience. Recognizing that with extra cash is thoughtful and appreciated by most cruise workers. But here's the other side of it. It can be performative. When people post about their extra tipping habits in a public way, especially with dollar amounts, it sometimes feels like a humble brag. It's less about generosity and more about, "Look how good I am." It's like they're campaigning for a gold star in the cruise community. It adds social pressure. These posts can guilt others into feeling like they have to match that level of tipping to be seen as decent or respectful. And not everyone can afford to drop an extra $100 per person per cruise. That doesn't make them bad guests. It just means people's financial situations differ. Generosity should be encouraged, not weaponized. It feeds a flawed system. Let's not forget, the only reason this kind of top-up tipping feels necessary is because the cruise lines aren't paying staff adequately. Yes, tipping extra is nice, but don't let the cruise lines off the hook. Crews shouldn't have to depend on random passenger generosity to make ends meet. Bottom line, extra tipping should be about gratitude, not ego. Do it quietly, do it sincerely, don't post it like a trophy. If you're going to brag, brag about how awesome your cabin steward was, not about how much money you handed them. A better flex would be, "We had an incredible steward named Maria. We made sure she knew how much we appreciated her." That still honors the gesture, but keeps the focus.
One last question. I asked ChatGPT, what is your final takeaway on all of this controversy? What's the bottom line for cruise passengers?
Tipping on a cruise ship matters, but the way you approach it matters even more. If you're comfortable with the automatic system, fine, let it ride. But don't ignore where that money is going. If you want to tip in person, that's fine too. Just be generous and fair. Be intentional. But don't do nothing. Don't walk off that ship thinking, I paid for my vacation, that's enough. Because someone scrubbed your toilet, someone carried your luggage, someone smiled at your kid when you didn't feel like smiling yourself. At the very least, that deserves a thank you. And maybe more than that.
Well said. Agree or disagree? I think we all need to think harder about this topic instead of just arguing about it online. And there you have it, ChatGPT's honest, balanced, no fluff opinion about tipping on cruise ships. Do you agree or disagree with the answers? Leave a comment below on how you think ChatGPT did. We are packing our suitcases, and we'd love to have you along for the ride. Thanks for watching, and see you on our next adventure.